Am I wrong for not offering to care for my ill ex-husband? This story came June 14th, 2024. I, 56 female, have been married to my wife, Angela, 56 female, for a year, and we're planning our first anniversary celebration with a trip overseas. I was very excited to spend time with my wife, but unfortunately, my ex-husband, Dan, 58 male, his recent hospitalization is putting a damper on my plans. Backstory. I met Dan in college and we got married shortly after graduating when we found out that I was pregnant. At the time, it felt like the right thing to do, but looking back, it was a bad idea. I resented having to put my career aspirations on hold in order to be the full-time caregiver, and Dan resented having to be the main financial provider. However, this did not stop him from constantly bringing it up whenever I asked him to help with the kids or at home. He also never defended me when his mother would stop by unannounced and the household wasn't up to the Queen's standards. I felt so exhausted and trapped, and if it weren't for my kids, Junior, who's 34, Sarah, 32 female, Michelle, 29 female, and Mike, 29 male, I would have left years ago. Unfortunately, Dan did not have the same values as me and blindsided me with divorce papers. It was a rough process, but after the first year of our divorce being finalized, I got my groove back, and within the next 4 years, I was able to get a nice apartment and a good career. Now on to present day. A couple of weeks ago, Dan was rushed to the hospital, and while the doctors were able to save him, his health took a turn for the worse. His wife is now essentially working to provide for their kids while her parents watch them to save on daycare. I learned all of this through my children, as I do not care to have any direct contact with Dan, but almost every time I talk to them, they always bring up how stressed they are and tired for having to look after their father. I thought I was just being a sympathetic ear, but a couple of days ago, my children came together to confront me about my lack of willingness to offer assistance to their father, and as their mother, I should want to care for him to make their own lives easier. My children know that while I have a full-time job, I can make up my own hours, and they want me to come into his house at least twice a week to make sure he is clean and fed and to pay for a nurse to come and do it as well. I refused, stating that Dan and I have been divorced for years and that their stepmom can handle that. That is when they told me she didn't care about their dad like they do and is most likely hoping for him to pass so that she can collect on his insurance policy as the legal wife. My daughter Sarah then began to cry and asked if I ever cared whether or not she had a dad anymore, while Junior and Mike thought that I was being bitter. Michelle asked me to put them first and asked if I can reschedule my anniversary trip with my wife Angela. My former in-laws are also calling me to say that I need to do this and that I would be a horrible mom if I don't. Am I the a-hole? I think you guys know what I'm gonna say. Two words. Not qualified to be giving any kind of advice on this. Because there's too many layers here. There's children, there's a previous marriage and love that's there. There's now a divorce, and now you're in a new relationship. So you guys out there with some more experience than me in life, please help a girl out with how we feel on this. Let's check out what Reddit is saying. Perfect, because Reddit is always brutally honest. Someone commented and said, turn this completely around and ask your children, how long are you supposed to put your life on hold, and are you never allowed to be happy and live your life? Tell your children that between the 4 of them and your ex-in-laws, they can split the costs of a hired nurse and healthcare professional to go to your father's house twice a week. Why should you pay for his care? You don't have the bandwidth and mental strength to be their father's caregiver. And it's really manipulative and cruel for them to emotionally coerce you to become your ex's caregiver. OP responded and said, Dan's parents are retired and rely on him to pay their bills. I'm told that Dan's wife freaked out at the mention of having his parents move in to help save money, and his mom's mobility isn't great, so it's not like she can do all the cooking and cleaning. Next comment. Absolutely not your job to pay for that either. If he's that bad off, I was thinking hospice or some equivalent, which usually isn't a cost to the family. Such a crappy situation everyone is putting you in. OP responded and said, we're Americans and our healthcare system is terrible. Worse if you don't have money. I was told that since my ex made too much money in the past 4 years, he doesn't qualify for assistance. Next comment. Why are they expecting more from you than his actual wife? Literally. That is one thought I had. I'm like, hold on here. What about his wife? I'm the ex-wife. OP responded and said, my children have told me in the past that they talked to her about this and said that she just lashes out at them, saying she is too busy with her new job and being the only parent to her kids. It got to a point where she temporarily banned my children from entering the home for a few days until they apologized to her. Interesting. So she's more focused on her children, not her stepchildren. Let's continue. We have an update. It came 2.5 months later. We're now at September 1st. First, a few people seem to be confused. So let me be clear. I am a woman who is married to another woman. My own parents passed away years ago, so their opinion is irrelevant. My wife and I both have children from previous relationships, but we didn't meet until after our children were adults. So my wife and I are the only ones who have ever lived together. Now on to what almost everyone else cares about the most. I went on the cruise. It was great and my wife and I had a really great time. My children were predictably unhappy and I'm sure that my temporary blocking of them didn't make it better. Most of my children kept calling and telling me that I was being selfish and that I'm an awful woman for choosing to go on the vacation instead of being there for the family. But like many of you have stated, I reminded them that their father divorced me and therefore my obligations to him ended. If it were any of them that had a medical need, I would cancel without question, but I would not do that for their father. I thought I could leave it at that, but because they kept calling and texting the first few days of my trip, that is when I decided to block them. Unfortunately, my ex's health took a turn for the worse and he had to go back to the hospital, and his lack of proper care triggered an investigation. I didn't know any of this until I unblocked my kids the day I got back, and some of them now blamed me for it. I have come to the conclusion that they're all just mad at the situation and I am a convenient villain. I've accepted this because I can understand the fear and anger of facing the idea of losing a parent you love. I just hope that one day we can all sit down with a family therapist and mediate the situation. However, this did start to trigger my past tendencies of sacrificing my own happiness and my well-being for my children. But my wife, therapist, and even a small piece of my inner self had to remind me that my children are adults and that my ex is not my responsibility. I tried to reach out, and so far, most of my children aren't talking to me and have made it very clear that I will not be able to see my grandchildren as a punishment. It's sad and I'm still wrestling with the guilt and doubt, but my wife and stepchildren are being very supportive, while my other family is a mix and most of my friends are neutral. This whole thing is awful, to be honest. Like, there's no winner here. Let's see what people are saying now. Someone commented and said, why aren't the kids helping him? OP said, my kids all have families and full-time jobs of their own, and they live about 45 minutes to an hour away. They initially started to take turns, but they said that they're all exhausted and are starting to feel the pressure from their spouses about not being at home. My ex's wife is now working full-time and says that she has her hands full with her 2 kids. My ex had 2 kids with her, so she's not in position to give him the care he needs, and she won't allow money to be spent on an at-home care nurse. I live much closer. I didn't realize when my wife and I moved because I didn't know my ex's address at the time, and I have a job where I can make up my own schedule. So my kids wanted me to come around and help my ex. Next comment. What's wild is he's not even their responsibility. Sure, it's a wonderful thing when kids take care of their aging parents, but they don't owe it to them. Their father might have fared better had he thought about someone else's happiness for once, but instead he divorced a woman who loved him and was willing to stick it out through the tough times and found a new wife who doesn't care about him. He's living the life he chose. period. Well, that seems a bit harsh, no? We don't know the whole situation. OP responded and said, I think you're giving me too much credit. In the beginning of our relationship, I can say that I did love him, but at my place in life now and looking back, I was never actually in love with him. I actually wanted to divorce him for a while, but I was willing to wait until all the kids were adults while he wasn't. If he had major health problems while within our marriage, I would have done things differently than what his current wife is doing, but I do feel like I would grow to resent him, especially with his mom around to criticize everything that I was doing. How is someone mowing the lawn right now? It's been a winter storm out there every day. There's no lawn to mow. Next update, we have 4 months later. We're now at January 2nd, 2025. For anyone who has been following my drama-filled and emotionally taxing life, I have another update for anyone who cares. This year it was my wife and I's turn to host the holidays, and since this past November was rough for us and her side of the family, we decided to go all out with a bigger tree, decorations, planned out activities and meals, etc. Also, as adults, we decided to do a secret gift giver where we pull names out of a hat. This year I got my stepdaughter Megan, 24 female, a sweater that I made by hand, but it was terrible. So I decided to make it a gag gift with an actual gift card to something she actually liked. On the actual day of, my wife and I woke up, had our breakfast, gave each other our spouse gift, and then we got ready for everyone else. It was Megan, Miranda's husband, Jack, and the grandkids, and a couple of others. None of the guests were my children with their families. It was sad, but not unexpected, and I think people could sense that because kids were extra affectionate with me. We played board games, ate, did crafts, talked, watched movies, opened gifts. It was nice. When there was a moment, Miranda pulled me off to the side and asked me to adopt her. I don't want to go into details, but Miranda's father was never active in her life and hasn't spoken to him in about 3 years. She said that with the coming year, if something were to happen, she wouldn't want a man she barely knows to have the power to make medical decisions for her if Jack or my wife were unable to. And she and Jack know that if anything were to happen, I wouldn't let my wife raise the grandkids alone. This had taken me by complete surprise, and I cried while graciously accepting, and then we made the announcement. We're going to start the legal process in a week, but the kids already switched to calling me a grandma type of name. We took and posted pictures, and since I knew I was blocked, I didn't expect my children to see, but apparently they did. My children feel that it's weird to do an adult adoption, that it's disrespectful to announce it on social media, and how hurtful it is that I made Megan a sweater but never made a thing for them. I stopped crocheting when my grandma, the one who taught me, passed away when I was a teenager, and I just never had the spare time when my children were kids. I tried to call to explain, but they blocked me again. However, Dill, who is Junior's wife, sent me a message with some information. My children are mad that I got Miranda's kids presents, but not my real grandkids. They think I'm replacing them all with my wife's family and that I'm selfish, and how they can't believe that I never once tried to reach out to them to see the grandkids. I wanted to reach out, but I thought it would be less harmful for me and them if I didn't force contact. I mean, I knew that wasn't going to be a good reaction from them. Now we have a very mini update. She answered something in the comment section 5.5 months later on May 26, 2025, saying, yes, the adoption was finalized. Since Miranda is over 18, the adoption went a lot quicker than had she been a minor, despite her father's ironic objections to it. Before we continue with the next update, you know the drill. It's hydration station. I don't make the rules, except I absolutely do. And the rule is you have to drink some water today. So, cheers. Update on the roses Matt bought me. These suckers will not die, and I'm not mad about it. If you've noticed, all the orange ones did. They have been buried to rest, but not the pink ones. These ones are, it's been weeks. Look how beautiful. Who would have thought? Oh, they still smell. All All right, so she posted the same day as that last comment, May 26th, but titled the post something completely new. And the title is, "Am I the a-hole for agreeing to look after my recently estranged son's children while my daughter-in-law divorces him? I have come across a new problem in my life, and my wife thinks that coming here will either help in getting another perspective or give me validation. I have 4 children that I birthed and raised by my ex-husband, and they have all recently decided to cut me out of their lives as I refuse to care for their father. Right now, the only way I'd be able to see my children or grandchildren would be if I physically went to their house and forced my way in. But I don't want to be that person. I'll admit it hasn't been easy and I miss them, but I, my wife, and my therapist all agree that if I give in to them, I'm just showing them that I cave to their demands every time, as they've made it clear it's either I care for their father nearly every day or nothing, and I don't want to do that. Especially since my ex-husband and I did not divorce on good terms. Recently, my eldest son's wife, Kate, 34 female, reached out to me and said that she had an emergency and asked if I wanted to see my grandchildren, Emma and Kyle. And I obviously agreed. At the time, I was under the impression that my son was aware, and since I was still blocked, oh, this is the wife of your son who is in no contact with you and has blocked you and everything. Oh, this is gonna get messy. Oh boy, buckle up. At the time, I was under the impression that my son was aware, and since I was still blocked, I didn't think to reach out and check with him. Kate dropped the kids off and I had a nice time. Kate came back a few hours later and asked me if I could watch the kids again. And when I asked about how my son felt, she told me that while he's still angry, he was fine and to just contact her if there were any problems. Unfortunately, Kate was lying, and I found out about this when my son came to my house furious. Apparently, Kate and him have been having problems since November, and she started looking for lawyers after my son told her to quit her part-time job, stop doing school online, and be a stay-at-home mom while also working on baby number 3. Kate stated that my son has been doing things to sabotage her, and I'm sad to say that some of the things she has said tracks with both of my sons. My son stopped paying for daycare. Kate's nearest relatives live about an hour away, and any friend that she would trust to look after her kids and were willing are also friends with my son and refuse to get involved. I was not happy about being lied to, but I can't find myself to be too angry because I got to see 2 of my grandkids. I admit that it's very selfish, but I agreed to keep taking the kids for her in exchange that she not lie to me, and to understand that if my son comes for the kids, I can't and I won't keep them from him. I've also agreed to pay for the summer daycare program for the kids so they have something fun to do, and my son is predictably not happy with me. My kids have unblocked me, but only to say that I'm a traitor and how much of a terrible person I am. It hurts, but my wife feels that providing a safe and fun place for the grandkids comes first. So I have to ask, am I the a-hole? Edit. Since more than one person brought up a good point, I just wanted to be clear. When I found out that Kate was initially lying, I didn't just take what she said as her reasonings as the whole truth. I did ask my son, and he either admitted it or didn't deny the accusation. Kate also showed me text messages, both in form of screenshots, and she handed me her phone. My son is also tragically displaying a lot of the same behaviors as my ex-husband did. Also, my ex does still have a wife, and from when I last spoke to my children, they said she wasn't doing a good job, although I haven't spoken to her directly because I don't feel the need to, and I also think that's being too nosy. Okay, so now we're getting into more recent times. The next update was 7 months later, December 24th, Christmas Eve of 2025. To get to the main points, over the summer, I paid for my son's children to go to the summer camp during the day, so Kate would have some free time to get her affairs in order, and I offered to look after them. My son, however, went to the camp and told the people there that he did not consent to the kids being there, so their spots were taken. My grandchildren were really upset because it was a nice camp and it had a lot of fun activities for them to do. My son basically just didn't give a crap because his goal was to essentially use them to keep Kate at home. He also threatened to call the cops if they ever went to my place, so Kate essentially just left the kids with my son and told him to figure out what to do with them, and she made sure to let the kids know that my son was the reason why they couldn't go to camp. When they met with the lawyers, my son tried to claim abandonment on Kate's part, but she showed proof that my son interfered with my grandchildren's activities while offering no alternative. While the divorce was going on, Kate got my son to agree, in writing, that he would allow them to have summer activities, and using my own wife's connections, my grandchildren were able to get into another summer program for the last month of summer, and they had a nice time. Kate has her own place now and a new and better paying job, and she has allowed me to FaceTime to see my grandchildren from time to time, and it has been nice. My children are now completely unblocked, but I had to block them because they would only call to berate and harass me, and even started to cause trouble for my wife and respective jobs. So still no resolution there. I was really hoping there was some kind of happy ending here. We ended up having to send an official legal notice to get them to stop. It is all so draining and upsetting, but my wife and my stepchildren are really getting me through all of this. I'm not perfect, but I'm happier now than I was while married to my ex-husband. Also, I heard through Kate that while the worst part of my ex's health issues are over, he is now permanently in a less than ideal state. Oh, he was also secretly spending thousands of dollars. Shut up. Wow, way to end with a plot twist. He was also secretly spending thousands of dollars on OF accounts. I cannot say the word, it gets flagged, but if you look up OF, it's essentially a platform for sex workers. I think I can say that. Which is one of the reasons why his current wife was so upset, and that it was actually one of my daughters who called Adult Social Services to file a complaint. The investigation ended without any fault being found with my ex's wife, and that my ex was just simply refusing to put in the work to get better. Wow. Remember when I said I was unqualified in the beginning? I could not feel more underqualified in my life for any of this. I can't wait to chat about it in the comments with you guys. So see you there. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy.